Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, indeed, home stretch now, and Mr. Gejiko Ikeji joins us. He's a legal practitioner. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Continuing on this national conference, I mean, eventually, Prof did agree that, of course, well, first of all, we have to talk. In spite of how pessimistic he did sound, he says, but the first thing is you have to talk. Do you even think there's a need to even talk, and what should we, or how should this talk be structured for the talk to make meaning?
Yes, thank you for having me. We need to talk. From Nigerian history, it's a very interesting history. Pre-1914, post-1914, post-1914, pre-1960, post-1960, pre-1999, post-1999, we have not really in real time spoken as nationalities. When Royal Niger Company came into Nigeria in a commercial endeavor and more or less took over the administration of Nigeria and connected with the scrambling and partitioning of Africa, and we saw Southern Protectorate of Nigeria and Northern Protectorate of Nigeria. The word Nigeria was coined by the British. We may not have anything against that word Nigeria, but along the line, by 1914, the same British decided that North and South should be amalgamated and brought together without reference whatsoever. This is elementary. Without reference whatsoever to our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers then. And one would have expected respectfully that our nationalists then, Herbert Macaulay and co. then, ought to have first addressed the issue of, if there is need indeed, that we should have Nigeria, and under what terms. But of course, we saw that they went ahead and started pursuing political ambitions and forgot the real fundamental question of Nigeria.
But some people also argue that then, shortly after independence, that the way we were structured did not make it expedient to have that discussion, that we're structured along regional lines, and that governance seemed to work at that level.
You are talking about pre-independence. Before we got to regional...
I'm talking post-independence.
Post-independence. We have not even got to post-independence. Even before independence, when our nationalists were going to all the conferences they were going to, in my view, I think that the agenda that should have served as priority should have been the question of Nigeria itself, not just political independence. And we give it to them. We got political independence, and the next agenda was republicanism, 1963. I am of the view that the focus ought to have been the Nigerian question. And that is why we are still struggling up until today.
Do you think that this was the case in the 60s?
Yes, I think so.
Even before
1914, after 1914, before independence, after independence, 1963, even during, in my view, I think maybe the coupists of 1966 may somewhere in their mind have had these issues at the back of their mind, but probably they didn't coordinate their activities properly, and as a result they failed.
What about when regional economies progressed based on the regional leadership that was provided at the time?
That brings to the fore the question whether regionalism or the present geopolitical structuring is the best form for Nigeria. And that, without discussing it, somehow or the other, our political terrain allowed it, and we saw how it resulted in regional developments. Each tripod, each stand, each pillar of Nigeria then developed along their lines, and it was okay. So that's the fact that along the line the military came in and unilateralized the Nigerian structure showed that we didn't. Yes.
That then it wasn't really a pressing question for them, because it seemed that they had taken it for granted. You called them one thing, you called them nationalists.
Yes.
They knew that to be able to get independence, they had to be united in that stand. They had a common goal, which was getting independence. And when they did, they knew they had a certain idea in their head as to how they were going to manage it in such a way that they could ensure development. It didn't seem to be a pressing question for them.
You see, they had a common enemy. Pre-independence, and that was to get the colonial masters out of the way. As soon as they got the colonial masters out of the way, and just maybe as soon as we became Republican, doing away with the monarchical system, as soon as we became Republican, it would have behoved on them to now sit down and do what we are now wanting to do: discuss Nigeria. That is what they ought to have done. That is my view. From even 1914, since we failed then to address it in 1914, pre-1914, at any given opportunity that we had, we ought to have addressed it. And that is why it is imperative that at this moment, we grab it with our two hands, and we do not allow no well-wishers, people who do not wish us well, to take hold of the process and derail it.